Hey Peyton, nice to see you again on this beautiful day. And this time with a quote by Søren Kierkegaard. Above all, do not lose your desire to walk. Every day I walk myself into a state of well-being and walk away from every illness. I have walked myself into my best thoughts, and I know of no thought so burdensome that one cannot walk away from it. Let's walk through this, Peyton. What do you think?
Good to be back, my friend. Yeah, it's surprisingly effective how this simple emotional processing method of walking around in order to let stuff flow through your system is for our lives. And it's a habit that I almost think is so straightforward and so non-complex that we often overlook the power of just strolling around when we really need to process some stuff. And it comes back partly to the fact that we're not just a brain in a vat. We're not just a computer. We're actually this body-mind system, that has a sympathetic and a parasympathetic nervous system, and a body-mind system that has a brain with two hemispheres that actually benefits from right, left, right, left, right, left bilateral stimulation in order to process, flow, and integrate thoughts, memories, and energies through the system. And so going to walk is surprisingly powerful as a habit, especially when we're going through difficult times, things that we're stuck on, things that we have trouble regulating ourselves. And it's honestly a great first resort when we feel like we need to shift our state, shift our mood, shift our mindset or our thought patterns, or we feel caught in a rut. And it's free and it has other benefits too. We will sleep better, we'll have better energy, and it's almost always available to us. As long as our legs are in decent condition and it's not thunderstorming outside, we can almost always go on a walk. And so it's helpful to remember. It's helpful to remember that this is a tactic available when we feel like we need a boost or a shift. How do you think about walking and the role that it plays in our life and helping us get through or work through what we need to work through?
Well, it's an ancient thing to do, actually. Our whole species walked through the world all the time, and some of them walked to collect some berries, some of them walked to get to hunting grounds, and basically we are walkers. And now the current condition of humanity is we turn to sit in front of screens all day long, and then sitting is the new smoking is the phrase I was thinking about, because it's the absence of movement which is bad for your health. So as you said, it's the habit that you would desire because it's so simple and straightforward and so effective, actually. Connecting the left and right hemispheres of your brain is a very important part in processing experiences. It's also now which comes to mind is a form of therapy which is called EMDR, which means eye movement sensitization. And this is basically very effective in processing trauma, because you look left and right to connect your brain halves. And this is what happens during walking very naturally. So if you just walk, it is practically the same approach as this EMDR therapy. And you don't need to have a trauma to give yourself the therapy of walking, as Søren Kierkegaard mentioned. I really like it because before we went to this conversation, I did a walk for myself as well. I didn't feel very balanced, but as soon as I started walking, all the dopamine came back and I felt really good in between the woods and listening to the birds sing their songs. And then the juices flowed again. My thoughts, color changed, and there were more positive thoughts. And I even went and recorded like an essay. I took myself on a walk to record an essay, and now I transcribe it. I clarify it a little bit, and now I will use it. And then I recorded another one. So it's a very good tool even to process not only your thoughts which you want to walk away from, but also to get out of your system thoughts you always wanted to share. in a form which is very consumable and is even philosophical. And that reminds me of Nassim Taleb's quote is, if you want to become a philosopher, you have to start by walking really slow. And this is why probably also what Søren Kierkegaard is referring to if he talks about the benefits of walking. And how often do you walk slow, and what benefits do you see in walking slow, and how do you get new thoughts and process them and get them out of your system usually?
Walking slow is I'm a fast walker. I am such a fast walker. I will say the only time when I really walk slow is when I want to turn my walking into a meditation and want to feel each step and connect with the sensations in my body. This is when walking slow I find to be helpful. How often I walk, though, is multiple times a day. I would say pretty much every day after lunch, I kind of habit stack my lunch with a brief walk right after. And it has multiple benefits to do that. It actually helps you digest your food if you take like a 10-minute walk after lunch. And it helps to tie walking with something else you always do. So maybe it's always you get up, you brush your teeth, and then you go on a walk first thing in the morning. This is really good to get the sunlight exposure and kickstart your circadian rhythm. I find that after lunch is really good because I try to burn all my fuel in the morning in deep work and then eat lunch, go on a walk, and sort of recharge my brain. And then I can have another very productive afternoon because my energy is back after doing this. And so that's where it's helpful. But regardless, I think the key is finding where it fits in your lifestyle, in your schedule, in your work life, in your weekdays, etc., and making it a daily habit rather than I occasionally think to do this, and so I end up walking once or twice a week. The daily is really nice. It's our body is not meant to occasionally walk. Like you said, we evolved to walk around all the time. We evolved without bicycles or cars or desk chairs, and so we were constantly strolling about to find our next meal or to gather things or to do things. It was always pedestrian mode, and we shouldn't pretend that we are different than or different species than we were 20,000 years ago. We still are Homo sapien animals that are built to move around constantly, and we flow energetically so much smoother and in a more aligned way when we move around daily, not sporadically. And what else I'll say when we're talking about just so simple, so readily available that we tend to overlook its power is breathing. I think that walking and intentional breathing and mindful breathing pair together so well, especially when we're in a state where our sympathetic nervous system is activated, where we're really upset or really concerned or worried or whatever. We feel this fight or flight. We feel maybe defensiveness, worry patterns, or anger patterns, or whatever going on in our brains, and we feel shattered in our attention. I think walking with mindful, deep breathing in and out with a pattern of maybe 4 or 5 seconds in breath, 5-6 seconds out breath can be so helpful to do for 10 minutes to re-regulate our system. And there's a lot of ways that we can pair walking with what else we're doing. So for example, when we take phone calls that are not video calls, we will actually oftentimes think better and they will go better if we are walking while we have the same call that we otherwise could have while sitting at our desk. And it's something that's often available to us. Once again, pending the weather, pending that our legs work, it's something that we can get in an extra hour-long walk during our day if we just look at, oh, hey, I have a call from 2 to 3. Can I take that while I'm walking and just have earbuds in rather than sitting while I do that? It's awesome. And what I'll say about that too, in terms of the better quality, it's not a made up thing that we think better when we walk. We actually do think better when we walk. And so when we have difficult problems to work through, or when we're feeling unclear or shattered or confused, walking is one of the best things that we can do to help our mind to flow better when it gets blocked or to unify again when it gets shattered. And creativity in particular is so deeply empowered by moving our body, particularly moving our body in nature, actually, which is a thread we'll probably come back to. But moving our body and creativity are so linked. A lot of people say they run and they get more creative. I've experienced going in the sauna and it helps my body flow and mind flow and I get more creative. And walking is certainly like this, where you stroll around and serendipities and opportunities and connections occur to you that don't necessarily occur at nearly the same rate when we are sitting still or in a sedentary environment. Walking allows the soup of our thoughts to get shaken up in a way that connections seem to form all on their own, and seeing novel ideas, novel solutions, ways that we can use this resource we weren't even thinking of to address this problem, or that we can approach this difficult problem in this new way that could never have occurred to us by just thinking harder of the same thoughts, but rather allowing things to flow and emerge on their own. The door to creativity gets greatly opened, and difficult creative problem solving, figuring out our most challenging circumstances with balance and with ingenuity and with awareness. This is drastically increased on walks. Awareness itself is drastically increased on walks. And so I think the trick to walks, and why we're talking and having this conversation about such a simple, obvious, basic concept that I think we all know on some level, is that it's so simple, it's so helpful, and it's somewhat subtle at times that we can overlook this resource that is already available to us as human beings with bodies. And that is not merely available, but something that is important to regulating and balancing our system. It's easy to forget how important this is for the flow and function of our body-mind system. And so this, I think, is the point of a conversation like this, is to remind ourselves that when we feel stuck, when we feel confused, when we feel like our parasympathetic nervous system, or like our sympathetic nervous system is activated and we can't find access to ease and flow and creativity, walking is a tremendous first resort, arguably the best first resort for these situations. It's incredibly versatile, and we can find ways to integrate it into our lifestyle that are actually very low cost. We can habit stack walks really well. Phone conversations, or listening to books, or whatever. We can do these things while we walk oftentimes, or even meditation. We can meditate while we walk, and it rocks. And so I think that just making it a habit, this is the difference. Do we do it daily or do we do it weekly? There is a world of change that we experience between one and the other as it relates to emotional regulation, creativity, and balance in our system. So how else do you think about the benefits? How do you think about the role that this plays, or just the awareness of when to go to this and how to integrate it into our lives?
This was a great overview, and I cannot add much, but I can put my spin on some points that you made. It's like one of the best first resorts. It's great, and we can just habit stack it. And for example, just in the morning, we can put our shoes out, we can put our clothes out and say, okay, the moment I get out of bed, I do a 5-minute walk around. That alone will fine tune your day into a day which is and feels a little bit better. We can habit stack meditation on top of it. We can leave our phone out, and these kinds of walks are also really nice when you just go out without any device and you are not losing your focus from what is there already right here, right now. You are not losing your focus, and you can focus on your breath, on your movement. You can do a meditation while you walk. I really love that concept. And in the retreat I've been in 6 months ago, we also did walking meditations, because in some places in Asia, when you go to a retreat, you sit only all day long. But this negates the body-mind system. This negates the necessity of our bodies to move, to be healthy. So if we walk and meditate, it's like a win-win scenario. So this is a very good thing to do. And the Japanese, they have this concept of Shinrin-yoku, which means just forest bathing, immersing yourself into the atmosphere of the forest. Yeah, trust me, it works. Try it out for yourself, and everybody who has been to a forest knows that it works, because you immerse yourself into this forest. You see all the flies flying around, maybe the sun, its rays through the leaves, and you just feel and experience that this is an alive system, which is very much interacting with each other. The trees breathe in CO2 and breathe out oxygen, and we breathe in oxygen and breathe out CO2. So you can feel connected with nature if you just go into the forest and immerse yourself in it and then walk in the forest. This is such a beautiful experience. And that's also why I introduced that concept to the software team 5 years ago. Now they still do it. Even when I was away in my sabbatical, they still went out not every day, but every now and then they went out into the forest to have a coffee together. And the team still exists as a continuum. They still enjoy being together, because also if you have like multiple opportunities to reduce stress and to rebalance people which you have in your team, then even a tiny improvement is worth it. And so you stack on top of forest bathing, you stack some appraisal, you stack some team dynamic improvement, you stack some reflection parts on it so that the energy is rebalanced as well. So this is very effective even if you're in business. So if you have people who only sit in cubicles, then think about why they sometimes feel more miserable than they actually should, and which opportunities you have a boss to say, hey, these times we just walk around, and maybe after meal we all walk around, and even 5 minutes are free, and I'll invite you for a coffee there. So just that we walk around. So it improves the health of your employees as well if you invite them for a walk. And every opportunity to improve the health of people you also have responsibility for is a good thing to take. And it helps the emotional regulation, as you said, and therefore we have a better life if we walk. So the main conclusion of our conversation is we will have a much better life if we just take our feet and go outside into nature and walk around a little bit.
Yes, drastically simple and easy to forget. And I'll say too that because it doesn't seem like it will solve everything all at once, we're kind of tempted to ignore it as a first resort. Like maybe we feel so worried or confused about something that a voice in our head says, what is a walk going to do when I have all of this to deal with? And actually this is the wrong view. The walk is the thing that can make everything that follows it easier. It can make our mind more clear and our energy better, that will then enable us to work through all of the hard things in a much better way. The two things that I want to circle back on that you mentioned is one, and the most, I would say, enhancing piece to a walk. So yes, it is worth going on a walk, even if it is just you're surrounded by concrete and metal all the time and noise. Like that's still much better than just sitting still inside all day, because you get natural light for one, you get this body movement, your blood flows, your system gets to move, your body can flow through energy. It's great. But the more on the naturey spectrum you can make that walk, the better it's going to be for your regulation, for your clarity, for your processing, for your awareness, for your perspective, for your thoughts, for your creativity, for your balance, and for your parasympathetic nervous system and sense of ease. All of this is enhanced by natural environments, and it's on a spectrum. So if you're walking around a block with no trees, you upgrade by going to a block with more trees on it. If you are walking around a block with trees on it, you upgrade by going to the city park, even if there is still the noise. If you're in a city park, you upgrade by going to the more remote nature reserve where you're more in a forest. And the further on this nature spectrum you can get to being out in a forest in a way that it feels like civilization doesn't exist, the better you're going to be on that spectrum on your walks. And this is not to be perfectionist. It's easy to get the wrong conclusion there and say that, oh, it's not even worth going on this 10-minute walk around my noisy block because I'm not even in a forest. That's not the conclusion. That the perfectionism is the enemy of effective habit manipulation. And so we should never be perfectionists with the amount or the location. However, we should be aware that if I can turn left or I can turn right, and this way leads to a forest and this way leads to concrete and metal, I should go toward the forest if I want to get the most out of this walk in the regulation, including creativity, including all of this stuff. Nature is so well documented, so well studied, and we can just experience it over and over for ourselves. This restores our attentional reserves, it restores our energy, it enhances our creativity, it enhances our sense of balance, it enhances our real, actual activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. Nature is unbelievably helpful in natural environments, and even being around trees as opposed to not being around trees, wonderfully helpful. And to that point, this does give us a little bit of a decision factor. Not the only decision factor, of course, there's many variants on this, but this is not to be ignored when we determine the actual place that we want to live in. When we are selecting between this apartment and this apartment, or this house or this house, or this city or this city to live in, the actual direct, immediate walking environment by our house is surprisingly impactful. There's a lot of downstream impacts. If we love to go on a walk right from our front door, we will walk more right from our front door. If we can walk directly into nature from our front door, we will spend much more time walking in nature. And it's not to be underestimated. It's not to say that we need to be perfectionists and this is the only factor, but it is to say, do not underestimate how much it will change your life if you can walk out your front door and walk into a beautiful natural environment. It is unbelievably helpful. And the more on that spectrum we are, the happier and more balanced and healthier we will tend to be, is my personal experience. And so, and same with where we work, same with where we live, our environment is especially impactful for this reason of you're not, in fact, going to drive to somewhere beautiful to walk 7 days a week. In reality, the habit will not stick. Probably. But if you have no friction to the point where you can just throw on your shoes and walk directly out your back door into your walk, this is something that you can do every day. This is something that you can do right after dinner. This is something that you can do right when you wake up. And so the spot that our house is on, if we can take a walk in a natural environment, even if it's very limited, even if it's small, even if we're almost like pretending that we're surrounded by infinite wilderness rather than actually being, the closer we are to a natural environment and where we sleep at night will lead to us taking more walks in a way that will rebalance and restore our systems. So this is when that decision comes, this is actually a surprisingly important and impactful factor because it's upstream of our walking habits and our nature habits, which is upstream of our energy and sense of balance, especially if we're in hard phases of life, especially if we have a lot to process, a lot to work through, a lot of creativity needed, a lot of difficult problems to solve, a lot of emotions that we need to weather, and a lot of balance that we need to cultivate. This is when it becomes particularly impactful. And I've been on both sides of this, and I can attest. The best I ever felt was when I was living in a national park in the south of France, probably in terms of my daily walking lifestyle. And since then, I've been very mindful of the difference between living in only surrounded by concrete in a concrete desert versus surrounded by a lot of trees and green. It is very, very nourishing to our souls. Any remaining call outs or takeaways from you about this besides just don't forget, don't underestimate how helpful this is for us?
Well, you mentioned it. The environment is really important to your well-being. The environment you find yourself in, or the environment you decided for yourself to live in. Because I remember during my studies, half a year I lived in a part of an old town where the sunlight never hit once. Like maybe half an hour sun came into the room. But it was very dark, there were no trees around, and only once there was like a bird visiting my window, and I felt like this was probably one of the most straining periods of my life because the environment was not made for me. I really want to be surrounded by trees, by nature, natural sounds, and this is what nourishes me. So you have to also realize how much of an impact that has on your well-being. And this is a great reminder. Let's choose our environment according to the spectrum that we are suited for. And the more nature, probably the better, because we are still stone-aged humans in a modern environment. Yes. And that's why it is ever more important that we remember to walk again, as we always did as a species. So let's walk every day ourselves into a state of well-being, my friend. It was a pleasure to talk with you. And any closing thought?
I'm going to go take a walk. Great talking to you too, my friend. I enjoyed the conversation.
See you soon, man.
See you soon. Talk to you in the next one.